Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the live stream worship of the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Sheridan, Wyoming. I am Victor Asher. I am the worship chair. This month's theme is prayer and meditation. We will be inviting announcements, so feel free to chat those in, or you can use Ian's cell phone, and his number is 307-461-7403. So while we're waiting for announcements to come in, I'll just say a few words. I hope that you will see that prayer is not just for theists and believers, and that prayer and meditation share in common openness to what is beyond our ordinary experience and connecting to what is sacred and universal. So I hope people will be open-minded as we are challenged by another word that probably makes many Unitarian Universalists feel uncomfortable, the word prayer. So hopefully we can put a different spin on that and hopefully lead to some more positive experiences around that. And I will pause and see if we have announcements, and it looks like we do have a couple. And so, Grace, would you like to come forward and share that with us? Grace Cannon.
Good morning, everyone. We have some comments coming in saying good morning. I don't have any major announcements. Ian, are you having anything coming in?
I guess it's just a joy and concern. But the person who texted me, I don't have their number and they didn't sign it. So if you could let me know who you are, that way we all know who the message is coming from.
Great. So when sending in announcements and joys and concerns, especially to Ian's phone, just go ahead and add your name as well so we can make sure to put the right name on that. Last four digits of the number, maybe, Ian, just to...
740. Oh, the last four digits of their number?
Yeah, just in case somebody's not sure.
Yeah, it's a 752 4379.
4379. So if you just sent in, please just also add your name to your announcements and joys and concerns. Great. So if announcements come in, we can always kind of come back to them as well. But we also might just keep moving for the time being.
Thank you.
So some opening words, and I'm actually going to be reading a poem by Mary Oliver. The poem is entitled Morning Poem. Every morning, the world is created. Under the orange sticks of the sun, the heaped ashes of the night turn into leaves again and fasten themselves to the high branches, and the ponds appear like black cloth on which are painted islands of summer lilies. If it is your nature to be happy, you will swim away along the soft trails for hours, your imagination alighting everywhere. And if your spirit carries with it the thorn that is heavier than lead, if it's all you can do to keep on trudging, there is still somewhere deep within you a beast shouting that the earth is exactly what it wanted. Each pond with its blazing lilies is a prayer heard and answered lavishly every morning. Whether or not you have ever dared to be happy, whether or not you have ever dared to pray. And now I invite you to enjoy some singing. We have a video that was prepared by Gabriella Rifle. That's Ryffel. And I'm sorry, I missed. I know that Gabriella is married to Doug Andrews, and so I misunderstood that she has retained her maiden name. So it's Gabriella Rifle, and she will be singing for us. We have a fairly long video, and I hope that you will enjoy it.
Hi everyone, it's Gabriela, and I wanted to say thank you very much for letting us stay on your property. Doug and I quarantined in the trailer there, and that was super helpful, so thank you. And I am excited to be part of your service today. I am going to sing 2 songs from a woman called Hildegard von Bingen. She was a German nun, and she lived around the year 1100, and she was, for her time, she was a pure rebel, and she was this big composer. She wrote books about her observations in nature, about healing plants, her own recipes, and she became this famous advisor to the Pope and some kings. And she was one of the first big composers of that time, but the Catholic Church kind of tried to let that, or they made that disappear because she was a woman, and just I think around the year 2000 she got declared a saint. So that's Hildegard von Bingen, and I hope you will enjoy her songs. And I am also gonna say a prayer. It's the Lord's Prayer, and I'm gonna say it in an old German dialect, and we don't really know what it sounded like, but that is my interpretation, and that is what I think it might have sounded like. So have a wonderful Sunday, everyone, and I am sending you greetings from this wonderful woods. Bye bye. Vater unser, du der bist im Himmel, sich geheiligt dein Name, komme dein Reich, sei dein Wille. Så här im Himmel ist so sie här in Erdo. Unser Brot, dachaliches gib uns juttu, in die verlass uns unsere Skuldi, so wir verlassen es unseren Skuldigen. In die nicht leitest uns in Kostuncha, wie sau erlösi uns sie von Ubile. Queme thin Richi, in die Kraft, in die Herrlichkeit, in die Even der Even. Amen. O Jerusalem, aurea civitas, o nata regis purpura, o edificatio summe bonitatis quaes lux, numquam obscurata, tu enim sonata in aurora, et in calore solis. O beata pueritia, cui rutilas in aurora, et o laudabilis adolescentia, cui ardes in sole. Nam tu, o nobilis ruperte, in his sicut gemma fulsisti, unde non potest abscondis stultis hominibus sicut, nec mons valit cella tu.
Hi everyone, it's Gabriela, and I wanted to say
Welcome back. We're having a little audio
technical difficulties.
glitch.
Hold on a second.
That was very beautiful. And I'll just say thank you so much to Gabriella as we get this sorted out. What a wonderful gift.
Technical difficulties. Hold on 1 minute. I'm really not sure what's happening.
Volume too high on the microphone.
The video is playing somewhere in the
The
background.
video is playing somewhere in the background,
coming through.
and it shouldn't be. I'm not sure if they can hear us or if they can hear.
Well, I think
the
they
thing.
can see us because it got a little live. Here, I'm looking down at myself on my phone right now. Please stand by.
Stand by, yeah. Please stand by. All right, I think I've got it fixed. So sorry. That's a first.
That's a first. We had the volume up listening to Gabriella's video while we were doing that. That's why that resulted in that. And what a wonderful gift. Thank you again, Gabriella. Okay, we move on now to lighting the chalice. We already have many joys and concerns coming in, but this is a reminder. If you have a joy or concern, please do send it in via the chat, or also you can text Ian. So if you don't mind lighting, thank you very much. I will read by Rabbi Abraham Heschel, Prayer. Prayer invites the sacred to be present in our spirits and in our lives. Prayer cannot bring water to parched land, not mend a broken bridge, nor build a ruined city. But prayer can water an arid soul, mend a broken heart, and rebuild a weakened will. Okay, we have some here. So I would love to start with a joy. Barbara just delivered donuts and she's running to get coffee for everyone here, and that is just very kind and thoughtful. And it looks like from Barbara we have a couple things. So if we can light a candle for concerns, prayers for Ron and Linda Smith and their entire family, and the loss of a baby, Kaylani, who passed away this past week. Kaylani was born with a congenital heart defect 7 months ago and spent almost all of her short life in the hospital in critical care. Kaylani's young parents live in Albuquerque and have been at their daughter's side throughout this desperate situation. Barbara also sends another joy and concern. Our twin granddaughters are off to college, hoping to have a basketball season in 2021, as well as an education. One is already in Missoula, and the other goes to Pennsylvania next Sunday by car. There's one from Cal as well. I'll also go over here. There's some in the chat. Let's see. Catherine Osborne asks, can we light a candle of concern for all the children, teachers, and staff who are returning to school, especially those who are at risk for serious complications of COVID-19? Let's see. And then, so from Cal, here it is. A joy and a concern. If we can light a candle, he had a great visit from his youngest son, Daniel, and daughter-in-law, Sarah, and now they are back in Phoenix, which is not the greatest place to be health-wise right now. Thank you, Cal. And then, let's see, from Catherine Johnson says she seconds Catherine's concern and light a candle for us going back to school. I also have a joy for my son Nate and wife Chelsea, newlyweds for 2 weeks now. So grateful we were able to be there. Okay. Popping back and forth. I think I've gotten things that have been sent in. Please do feel free to send any more joys and concerns in. Anyone here would like to?
I was going to light one for Kalani, but obviously Barbara took care of that.
Yeah, thank you.
This is Sonia's 7th birthday today. So that's a joy, and we spent a whole week celebrating in the mountains, and now she's back here with her mommy and the Bighorns at the Antelope Butte Festival, and we'll keep the party rolling at my parents' house. So it's a big week for Sonia.
Great. Okay. And I'm just also, I want to note, I'm seeing a lot of comments here about how beautiful the music from Gabriella was. People saying thank you so much for that wonderful gift. Catherine Johnson says she's joyful for those of you willing to be there to keep our community fellowship going. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Sue says, happy birthday, Sonia. That's great.
Great.
Okay.
I will light one more candle for joys and concerns felt in our hearts but left unexpressed.
I would like to add my thanks to Gabriella for that lovely music, and it is so appropriate to our theme, as that chant is so prayerful, and so contemplative and so beautifully rendered. So thank you very much, Gabriela, for that. I want to say thanks as well to Jules, who actually sent me the message that I'm going to deliver. And she asked me to participate in this month's theme of prayer and meditation because I have been kind of leading the meditation group in the fellowship for a number of years. And I want to express my thanks to Lila Bruno, who actually started our meditation group. She is a meditation instructor, and she was trained in Shambhala meditation. So this morning's meditation is actually going to be a real Shambhala Buddhist meditation, and it's going to be a little bit longer than our usual one. So make yourselves comfortable, either sitting on a chair or on the floor. It's going to take about 10 minutes to get through this. I'm going to be reading instructions. They'll last about 6 or 7 minutes, and then we'll have some silence for a few more minutes. I'll gong at the beginning and at the end of the meditation period. So if everybody is ready. When you sit down, take a balanced, grounded posture to allow the energy in the center of your body to move freely. If you're on a cushion, sit with your legs loosely crossed. If you're in a chair, keep your legs uncrossed and your feet flat on the floor. Imagine that a string attached to the top of your head is pulling you upright. Let your organs, muscles, and bones settle around your erect spine like a coat falling around a hanger. If your vertebrae should feel as though they are stacked like gold coins, allowing for the natural curvature of the spine. Slouching impairs the breathing, which directly affects the mind. If you slump, you'll be struggling with discomfort in your body at the same time you're trying to train your mind. What you want to be doing is the opposite, synchronizing your body and mind. As you work with getting your spine erect, place your hands on your thighs. They shouldn't rest so far forward that it begins to pull your shoulders down, nor so far back that the shoulders contract and pinch the spine. The fingers are close and relaxed, not spread out in a grip, as if you can't let yourself go. Tuck your chin in and relax your jaw. The tongue is also relaxed, the tip resting against your upper teeth. Your mouth is ever so slightly open. Your gaze is downward, with the eyelids half shut. If the gaze takes in too much, it will be hard to abide peacefully. On the other hand, closing your eyes completely might encourage you to fall asleep or to withdraw your mind from the technique. If your mind feels removed and insular, intense and dark, try raising the gaze and allowing more space into your practice. The eyes aren't looking, by the way. The eyes just see. It is the same with sound. We aren't listening, but we do hear. In other words, we're not focusing with our senses. The first step of the meditation technique is placement, placing our mind on the object of meditation. In peaceful abiding, the object is the simple act of breathing. The breath represents being alive in the immediacy of the moment. Placing the mind on the breath and returning to it again and again is the essence of shamatha. Through resting the mind on the breath, we stay present, awake, and mindful. Placement means staying with the feeling of the breathing. The flow of the breath soothes the mind and allows for steadiness and relaxation. It also reduces discursiveness. This is ordinary breathing. Nothing is exaggerated. We just breathe. If you're having a hard time staying with the breath, spacing out or losing track between breathing out and breathing in, counting the in and out cycles of the breath can be a helpful remedy to bring yourself back to focus. We breathe in and then out, 1, in and then out, 2. If you use this method, count 7 or 21 breaths and then start over. If you become distracted and lose count, start over again at 1. Once you are more focused, you can drop the counting. We're placing the mind on the whole breath, and it takes time to feel what that is. We might discover that the breath itself is not as solid as our concept of the breath. We might see that the word breath describes something that is not so much one entity as a series of events. Air enters through the nostrils, the abdomen expands, and the breath rests there for a moment. Then the diaphragm contracts, and the breath leaves the lungs, gently exits the nostrils, and dissolves into space. Through placing our mind on this process, we relax our whole being. Tensions begin to dissolve. The breathing soothes the mind and allows it to rest. As our thoughts slow down and we settle into ourselves, the division between mind and body lessens. We start to feel our heart beating. We sense the flow of our blood. We can almost feel our bones. We become a whole being with a synchronized body and mind. We may become swept away for a while and forget that the breath, not the thoughts and emotions, is the object of our meditation. The technique at this point is that when we notice we're thinking, we acknowledge it. We can label it if we wish, thinking. Whether we label it or not, when we notice it, we bring our minds back to the breath. In acknowledging thoughts, we're recognizing the movement of the mind, the wildness of the bewildered mind. We're training in awareness of who we are as human beings. We're training in being undistracted and focused. We're training in being fully present for our lives. Our peaceful abiding has been flooded by a current of thinking that is about to become an emotional torrent. At some point we see this. Oh, I'm thinking. Acknowledging it, we allow the thought to dissipate, and we return to the breath. We realize that now we are practicing meditation, so it is not the time to think about those things, but simply to pay attention to our breathing. We refocus our attention and say to ourselves, now I am placing my mind on the breath. Welcome back, everybody. I hope that gives you a little bit of a flavor for Shambhala meditation. If you're interested in pursuing that further, our meditation group has been meeting in my backyard on my patio with social distancing, and we meet at 4:30. My address is 1433 Stonegate Drive, and you are certainly welcome to join us. The meditation group lasts an hour, and we do sitting meditation, and we also do walking meditation. Walk around the backyard in the grass for about 10 minutes, and then we have some more seated meditation. So if you are interested in joining us, you would be most welcome to do that. So now I'm going to turn our attention to the talk. Some of you may have seen the recorded message that Jules prepared for us for last Sunday, and it was built around the idea that service is our prayer for UUs. Today's talk will be exploring prayer and meditation as contemplation. For me personally, there really is no contradiction because contemplation inspires service. I have to say, before I begin reading the message itself, that having read this message myself, it's actually changed my own view about prayer. I abandoned the idea of prayer when I was about 18 years old and really never looked back. But because for me, prayer was about, talking to a divine being. And if you don't believe in a divine being, you can't really, I didn't think, engage in prayer. But it turns out I was wrong about that. And so I hope that maybe this might change some other minds out there. The message was written by Reverend Kirk Lodeman Copeland, who happens to be the person who provides us with touchstones materials, which we use in a lot of our services, almost all of them. And so Reverend Lodeman Copeland gives us a variety of perspectives about prayer, some of which I hope will be of value to UUs. And then after the Reverend Lodeman Copeland's remarks, there's an additional short piece describing meditation. I think you'll see that there are both similarities and differences between prayer and meditation. So here now are Reverend Lodeman Copeland's words. As children, many learned that prayer was petition, asking God for something for ourselves. God becomes the old man in the sky with a long white beard, a cosmic Santa Claus who can, on a whim, grant or deny our petition. For those who are atheists or agnostics, the idea of prayer may have little value. For others, this narrow idea of prayer as petition seems less than satisfying. Prayer at its core is not petitionary. It is relational. I'll say that again. Prayer at its core is not petitionary. It is relational. Prayer involves cultivating a connection with our deepest selves, with those around us, and with that which transcends us and commands our awareness, whether that is humanity, God, nature, life, or whatever else for us is holy. Often, when someone is ill, I will say, I will hold you in my thoughts and prayers. To call someone to mind and hold them in our thoughts is, I think, rather special. Perhaps that is enough, and yet to hold that same person in prayer takes that relationship to a deeper level. We are then expressing our deepest yearnings of our heart in regards to that person. What is prayer for you? One way of describing different prayers is gimme, oops, ouch, wow, and thanks. Or in other words, prayers of petition, confession, intercession, praise, and gratitude. What is prayer for you? Unitarian Universalist minister Jack Mendelson writes, and I quote, "Suppose we think of prayer not as a means of commandeering God's attention for our personal wants, but as an approach to the deepest truth about ourselves. Suppose we think of it as a way of shedding new light on our relations with others or with God. Suppose we think of it as an essential religious striving to touch truth and tap resources within and beyond ourselves." End quote. What is prayer for you? Mendelson continues. Prayer is an effort to reach deep and to reach out and to become what we would like to be and need to be and ought to be. Proper prayer is not a petition to escape realities. It is an effort to face up to realities, to understand them, to deal with them. It is an expression of the desire to grow in spiritual stature, in courage, in strength, and in faith. And that is the end of the quote of Reverend Mendelson. The most influential Unitarian of the 20th century, James Luther Adams, wrote, quote, "To be genuine, prayer must lead to a sense of the ultimate, and yet also to a sense of the intimate." That's the end of the quote. In the end, intimacy and ultimacy are the yin and yang of religious life. We can experience these in many different dimensions of prayer. For some, prayer is a conversation with God. But don't make the mistake of thinking that you know what they mean by the word God. You can only know by asking, and I would venture to say that if the person has any spiritual depth at all, their notion of God might well surprise you. Consider these words by Episcopal Bishop Shelby Spong. Quote, "I do not believe that there is a being, a supernatural deity standing over against the world, who seeks through some invasive process to imprint the divine will on the life of my world. The deity I worship," he explains, "is rather part of who I am individually and corporally. God is the presence in whom I have my being." End quote. For some people, prayer is a conversation with themselves. As psychiatrist Gerald May said, quote, "Prayer is all about the deepest longings of our being," end quote. Giving voice to those longings in quiet solitude can be both affirming and liberating. As UU minister Ken Collier writes, quote, "Prayer is anything that reveals to you the holiness, the beauty, the healing, the uniqueness, and the wholeness of life," end quote. For some, prayer is service done on behalf of others. As the African American sociologist W.E.B. Du Bois wrote, quote, "The prayer of our souls is a petition for persistence, not for the one good deed or single thought, but deed on deed and thought on thought, until Day calling unto day shall make a life worth living, end quote. Unitarian minister Lon Ray Call explained, quote, prayer doesn't change things, prayer changes people, and people change things, end quote. Or finally, as Dorothy Day explained, quote, I believe some people, lots of people, pray through the witness of their lives, through the work they do, the friendships they have, the love they offer people and receive from people, end quote. Here we see the service is our prayer idea, as it was the focus of last week's video. For some, prayer is praise, their response to the experience of astonishment, wonder, or awe. As the poet Mary Oliver writes in her poem, The Summer Day, and I quote, I don't know exactly what a prayer is. I do know how to pay attention, how to fall down into the grass, how to kneel down in the grass, how to be idle and blessed, how to stroll through the fields, which is what I've been doing all day. Tell me what else I should have done. Doesn't everything die at last and too soon? Tell me, what is your plan to do? What do you plan to do with this one wild and precious life? For some, prayer is an expression of gratitude. Arliss Unger writes, quote, each morning as I step outside to get the newspaper, I stop to notice something for which I am grateful. I give thanks for the feel of the cool wind on my face, or for the beauty of the clouds in the morning sky, or for the call of the quail up on the hill. It is my way to start the day with a prayer, end quote. The medieval mystic Meister Eckhart said, quote, if the only prayer you ever say is thank you, it will be enough, end quote. Finally, for some, prayer is seeking forgiveness, perhaps undeserved, but as necessary as the air we breathe. What is prayer for you? Many Unitarian Universalists are more comfortable with meditation than prayer. Meditation is a spiritual practice. Karen Morgan writes, quote, meditation is a technique that creates a stillness which brings us into the present moment so that we can find to the present moment so that we can find and face ourselves. It is a way to unlock your full potential in all areas of your life. There are many different ways to meditate. However, the common thread among them is concentration, end quote. Each method involves a way to focus your concentration so that you become present to your deeper self. Getting connected with your deeper self will allow you to find answers to the questions you face in life. We have all had instances in our lives of this type of connection and stillness. Think of a time when you looked into a newborn baby's eyes, or looked at the night sky and felt the wonder of the vastness, or sat by a river and allowed the sound of the flow move you to a state of stillness. These were spontaneous experiences. Meditation is about having these experiences purposefully. And that ends the quote. Buddhist teacher Thich Nhat Hanh says, quote, meditation is not an escape. It is the courage to look at reality with mindfulness and concentration. Meditation is essential for our survival, end quote. One way of comparing meditation with prayer is to note that the latter tends to be cataphatic, while meditation tends to be apophatic. Cataphatic is an approach that is content-oriented, with the content often focused on God or a person. Apophatic is a consciousness-oriented approach which seeks to empty the mind rather than focus on an image. Rather than focusing on content, meditation often focuses on breathing to help clear the mind, which is what we did a little while ago. There is an old dictum that counsels, quote, "If you try too hard to meditate, you can't," end quote. The resolution of this quandary in Zen Buddhism is captured this way. Quit trying not to try, and quit quitting. It should be clear that meditation requires commitment to cultivate skill over time. And now just a few words these are entitled Here, Now, You, and they're by Kat Liu. I hope I pronounced her name correctly. Breathing in, there is only the present moment. Breathing out, it is a wonderful moment. Again, the words of Thich Nhat Hanh. When I heard the venerable robes rustle at what I estimated to be about 40 minutes, and yet she did not give the signal that our sitting meditation had ended, that's when I knew she would take us to the full hour. But my knees were complaining, and my mind was bored with counting breaths. What do I do with the remaining time? Suddenly a stray thought entered. What if this were your last breath? Funny thing, I immediately began to breathe slower, drawing in the air to fill every crevice of my lungs, and then slowly pushing it out until there was nothing left to expel. Well, I thought, I must want to live. Of course, when I got to the end of that last breath, I was still there. So I began another breath, still asking, what if this were your last breath? There were flashes of regret, unfinished projects, loved ones grieving. But one breath isn't enough time to do anything about regrets. There was only enough time to experience the moment, to know that I was there breathing. Inhalation, exhalation. When the moment passed, there was the next moment and the next. In this way, I spent the remaining 20 minutes entirely in the present. Outside of the meditation hall, we still plan for the future and think of the past. But so often, we replay past regrets and worry about future events to the point that we're no longer living present in the present. As the Venerable says, we forget that we are breathing. So that ends the remarks. I hope that these words have helped to broaden your understanding of prayer and meditation and allowed these spiritual methods to appear more acceptable and more useful. And we will now have hymn number 83. And if you are so moved, please sing along from your house.
Winds be still, storm clouds pass, and silence come. Peace grace this time with harmony. Fly, bird of hope, and shine, light of love, and in calm let all find strength. lift our gaze toward distant view. Help us to sense life's mystery. Fly high and far, and lead us each to see how we move through the ways of eternity. Light shine in, illuminate our inward view. Help us to see with clarity. Shine bright and true, so we may join our songs in new sounds that become full symphony.
Are we back?
I think so.
Well, I hope you enjoyed the hymn. Now is the time for our offering. And so if you are inclined, as I hope you will be, please make a check payable to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Sheridan and send it to Ramona Stein, UUFS Treasurer, 1590 Sugarland Drive, number B206, Sheridan, Wyoming, or just give from our website, SheridanUU.org, tithely, or you can actually click the link from your order of service. And if you'll join me now, we'll bless the offering together. Let this be an offering to sustain and strengthen this place, which is so sacred to many of us, a community of memory and hope, for we are the keepers of the dream. And now I have a few closing words by the Reverend David O. Ronkin, if I can find them. Some of you may remember David O. Ronkin as the author of a little card that we used to have. I don't think we have them anymore. There are 10 things that Unitarian Universalists believe. And he wrote it before we had the 7 principles. So we much more often give out the 7 principles. But those 10 things, if we can ever find more of those cards, I think they're pretty nice. But anyway, here are the closing words, and they're called Singing in the Night. I love to pray, to go down deep into the silence, to strip myself of all pride, selfishness, and coldness of heart, to peel off thought after thought, passion after passion, till I reach the genuine depths of all, to remember how short a time ago I was nothing, and how a short time again I will not be here. To dwell on all joys, all ecstasies, all tender relations that give my life zest and meaning. To peek through a mystic window and look upon the fabric of life. How still it breathes, how solemn its march, how profound its perspective. And to think how little I know, how very little, except the calm of the silence and the singing of the night. Prayer is the soul's intimacy with the sacred, the ultimate kiss. And with those words, I will invite those of you that wish to comment. You can chat your comments in, or again, you can use Ian's email. I mean, not email, his text. You can text him.
Well, thank you so much, Victor. I thought there were lots of pieces in there that were really useful in thinking about prayer and meditation. You said early on, too, that there were ideas in here that changed how you were thinking about prayer. And I was just curious about maybe some of those pieces that were
Okay.
meaningful to you.
All right, so the pieces that became meaningful to me is to realize that you don't have to be engaged in a prayer with a deity. Prayer can be seen as an opening up of one's own heart and being open to the experience around us. So there's that idea, there's that, I can't remember those two words, but the kind of prayer that you have a particular petition or content, that you're praying to something. And then the other type of prayer that is more of the openness. So I would probably lean toward the, if you need to know the word, it's the apophatic as opposed to the cataphatic. So I would be an apophatic prayer rather than a cataphatic prayer. And when I was a kid, prayer meant you put on a prayer shawl and your phylacteries, and you opened a prayer book and you stood there for something like a half hour to an hour, and you read stuff. That was prayer. So it's very different than, as I think about it, maybe not so different after all, because there is that idea of stillness and contemplation and thinking about something larger than yourself, right?
Yeah. I really appreciated there's a moment in there where, prayer doesn't change things, but people change things, right? Prayer changes people, people change
That's
things.
right.
And I appreciated that because, of course, like the phrase thoughts and prayers in the context of the world that we live in now with social media, right? There's sort of this negative connotation with instead of acting to change the world and make it a better place, I offer my thoughts and prayers, which becomes a sort of like passive way to think that you're participating when maybe you're not. And so I appreciated that idea of like, because that's never felt totally right, even though it makes a lot of sense to me too, that prayer can change people. And that's the importance of the prayer.
Yes.
To move then forward into action.
Yes. And I think it ties in last week with this week and those comments by W.E.B. Du Bois and others about, and, Dorothy Day, that prayer really is service.
Yeah.
But for me, I don't want to separate the contemplative part from the service part. I think they could go, and I, in my way of thinking, they really need to go together. So, but if it's idle prayer that doesn't really change anything, then it's just idle, right? So people can say, my thoughts and prayers are with you, and they're not really experiencing anything, right? They don't, it's just, a phrase like, they're just saying it. Yeah. But if it's true prayer, right? If it's really contemplative,
Yes.
thank you. Then it opens us up and we feel something more and we're more inclined. Don't you think?
Yeah. I was thinking too about the quote about we need meditation for survival, and how for me, I tie that directly to Paulo Freire and praxis and the idea of reflection and action, that these things go together in a cycle forever. And when you can reflect on life and then, come into awareness and then act and then reflect and then act and reflect, that you can be much more, it's liberatory, it's revolutionary. And so that connects to me this notion of what meditation is for us and what it can be.
Oh, cool.
And prayer as well, I suppose.
So these words that were spoken had an impact on you.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that's cool. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah. I have a message here from Catherine Johnson who says, "Thank you, Victor. I really enjoyed your message. As a child in Catholic school, prayer was memorized words to ask for forgiveness when I was never sure what I was doing wrong."
Yeah, I had thoughts on the something about Catholic prayer that I grew up with was this idea of surrender and giving, like offering something up. to God. So like you've got a problem or there's something that is troubling you or something that's troubling in the world.
Yes.
And the idea was that it's beyond you as a person,
Right.
so you need to offer it up to the Supreme Being.
Yeah.
And I guess that kind of like ties into the whole to like the tradition of sacrifice. And this idea that in Christianity there's this ultimate sacrifice.
Yes.
It's got everything covered from the beginning of time to the end of time.
Right.
And you just need to tap into that.
Right.
And direct that. And I guess like that can seem like on the one hand that can strike me as really hopeless and leaving a person feeling very powerless.
Yes.
In the face of all the troubles in the world. But when I hear someone like Dorothy Day, who's, you know, like as Catholic as they come, even though she came at it from a really different direction, I can see how actually maybe that's really empowering.
Yes.
Because it can act as a way to reflect. It can act as a way to say, sort of recharge your own personal batteries and say, this might be beyond me, but it's not beyond the bounds of goodness which I, you know, ascribe meaning to in the universe. Right.
And you know, that prayer and also meditation, both of them connect us beyond ourselves. Right.
Right.
And I'm thinking too of Mother Teresa as another example of a Catholic who really embodied service. Right.
Right.
But it was certainly tied to her theology as well.
Sure.
And, you know, there's also that idea in Catholicism of imitating Christ, right?
Right.
So what was Christ's life about? It was service, right?
Yeah.
It was reaching people, it was helping people. So, yeah, there's parts of the theology that perhaps don't speak to us, but then there are other parts of it that really do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think part of the challenge for Unitarian Universalists, as I see it, and it's my own personal thing, but is that why don't we take the parts of what we learned that still make sense to us and maybe discard the parts that don't make sense to us anymore. Mm-hmm. So there is something of value in the Christian approach to prayer. There's something of value in the Jewish approach to prayer, but we don't have to get the whole, we don't have to do black or white.
Right. Sure.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I was hearing in part in your message, because I could, as you were talking, I was thinking, well, part of that sounds really good. And part of it sounds like I wouldn't go there, right?
Right.
And were you thinking that too, that part of it sounded really good to you and part of it not so much?
I think absolutely. I think big parts of it make total sense. And I think the parts of it that, you know, stick in my craw, as they say, are those historical aspects which continue to leave, you know, continue to frame things in a certain way which disadvantage some or leave certain people out or leave us, you know, with cultural gulfs between different groups of people.
For sure. Yeah.
And those
the
are
saved and the not saved.
The saved and the not saved, you know, the idea of the masculine and the feminine having these very particular positions.
Right.
And, those are the kinds of things that I feel very strongly we're not being served well by holding on to an archaic structure.
That's why you're here and not over there.
Right.
But you can still, and you do still hang on to the parts that speak to you.
Although I feel like in something like an orbit, it's taken me a long time to come back around to seeing the ways in which to value these processes. And to be able to gain enough understanding on like the historical perspective to be able to identify what is coming from where and what has value for its own sake and not as part of a historical tradition.
Or an obligation imposed by some hierarchy that makes no sense to you.
Right.
Yeah. So it's taken me a long time too to come back around. I left it for a long time, and I just found a new piece this last week about prayer. I never thought I would give any consideration to the idea of prayer, and now I'm thinking, boy, that sure makes sense. Parts of it, yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
That's really
great.
interesting. Yeah. So some time for. Do we have any more comments, or do we need to close?
We just have one announcement that slipped in a little after we started.
Yeah.
Sue Roberts is letting us know that we will be having a UU team for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, and their Out of the Darkness walk is in September. It'll be a virtual walk this year.
Yeah.
And she says for further info, you can reach out to her.
Cool. So do we have her email?
I'm sure that I have it here somewhere.
If not, we'll publish it, or maybe Sue, you can send out an announcement with your email attached to it, and that way we can all connect.
We've got until September though. So
Okay.
Good.
Yeah, thanks for that. One final message too is that we have fellowship time at the conclusion of this service, and the link for the Zoom is at the bottom of the order of service. And with that, I think we'll close and we will extinguish the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Well, thanks, Victor.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.